Welcome back to the Phightins Final, the 2022 Philadelphia Phillies year in review. Spectacular. Here with your boy Matty B on the Edge of Philly Sports. It's great to be back with you. Just 15 days, mark it, 15 days since the Phillies lost the World Series, but it's time to. Enough time has come and passed. We've settled down, got our thoughts together. Now we're going to talk about the 2022 season, and what not better guests to have do that as two gentlemen who spent the majority of you guys were the biggest contributors to the Phightins Final this year. So I felt it very poetic to bring you guys back for this. Mr. EOP himself, Big Al, and from the Patterson Ave Fanatics, Joe Marks. Gentlemen, I know that we are 15 days removed, and if you live in certain parts of this country today, you're digging out of 70 feet of snow. But the memories of the summer and the memories of the postseason still linger. Al, if I was to ask you how to summarize the 2022 season in one sentence, what would you do, and how would you answer that question?
Emotional roller coaster ride. That was my best way of explaining it. Emotional, at the time probably nerve wracking, but when you look back at it, it was worth every loop de doop and upsy daisies you go in a roller coaster such as that one. But you know what, man, it was a hell of a good time.
It was. Joey Marks, same question. How would you summarize your 2022 Philadelphia Phillies experience?
The Philadelphia Phillies in 2022 were inconsistently brilliant because after all the times that they gave us, like Al said, the ups and the downs, the want to punch your fist into the TV and then you jump for glee and put on like music that can have you dancing in the streets. It couldn't have been any more inconsistent, but it also couldn't have been any more brilliant.
Yeah, and mine would be pure and simple the second best Philly season of my life. I know we fell short of the ultimate prize, but it's a prize that was not in anybody's mind when the season began. So the ride they took us on was great. The '93 season is my favorite in all time. I don't think anything will supplant that, but this was definitely number two for a myriad of reasons. This show being one of them. But yeah, it was a magical ride. And so, gentlemen, tonight we have the unique opportunity to look back on this thing in somewhat detail. We're not going to spend 1,000 hours doing it, but we're going to kind of capsulize some of the great moments and some of the things that made this season specifically unique for the Phillies. And to begin that, guys, I got to go back to December 1st, 2021, because that is when the baseball lockout. Do you guys remember the lockout? We actually did have a lockout. The baseball was locked out. A lot of uncertainty. The first labor or work stoppage since 1995. The strike year back then, or 94, I guess you would call that. They canceled the end of the 94 season. A lot of uncertainty. They got their act together in March 10th, but it was not without some penalizations and some consequences. The spring training was reduced to half. Instead of the normal 6 weeks, it was down to 3. And the first 2 series of the season were canceled and moved to the back end of the season and then scattered throughout the season. Opening day was on April 8th. Phillies and the A's. Kyle Schwarber started things off with the leadoff home run. But guys, Al and I remember talking to you specifically about this when the lockout ended. Within 48 hours after the lockout ended, we had Kyle Schwarber and Nicholas Castellanos in our net. How excited were you, Al, about that? Not only that the lockout was over, and what's your opinions of the lockout and whatnot, but how excited were you with the addition of those two superpower bats in our lineup in 2022?
Ecstatic. I mean, I think at that time I was feeling, would be the only time during the season that I felt World Series was a possibility. I mean, nobody expected him to open Dombrowski or any of them to make any moves. Maybe one, at most, and even that was probably a slim chance of happening. We all kind of thought that they were going to run with the team that they had, maybe upgrade a couple spots in the bullpen, but nothing crazy. But they went out, brought in 2 big sluggers, and we were kind of going, okay, maybe stupid money is a thing.
Yeah. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, when we brought in Schwarber and we brought in Castellanos, I know at the time because the Middleton didn't like going over the luxury tax like ever. So we always kind of thought, okay, we're going to get one or the other, and then we're going to fill those other holes. And that's where I think a lot of people landed on. But when we landed both, all of a sudden, then the adage just came out of like thin air, bash the bell. And that's what this team was built with when they signed those two specific hitters in mind. Kyle Schwarber being the beast he's been, especially against the Phillies, but just in general, the beast that he is. And then Castellanos, for what he did in Cincinnati, it was high expectations for what these guys could do as far as the long ball was considered. And the way that Citizens Bank Ballpark is built, it is a hitter's ballpark. And I think Dombrowski knew, hey, if we bring these guys in, that's going to infuse so much more offense into this team. And inevitably, there has to be a progress with this team if that happens. And there was.
I felt so excited that I called Al and said, Al, I want to do a post-game show.
Yeah. Yeah, Nick Castellanos and Schwarber should take a little credit for the Phightins final.
That's right. I said, listen, you know what? This is going to be an epic season. We're going to hit 755 team home runs, and I want to be documenting every single one of them. So, no, I was really excited too. It was amazing. I agree. I thought we were going to get one of the two. I mean, they were the two of the three biggest free agents. Chris Bryant being the other one, was the prizes. So, gentlemen, we ended up going to Clearwater with those two prizes. But we also went into Clearwater with no center fielder. We went in the Clearwater with a hurt Zach Wheeler. We went into a Clearwater with a can't get back to the country Ranger Suarez issues. And we went in the Clearwater with a lame duck manager and Joe Girardi. But we looked past all that. And, one last thing. We went into Clearwater with a very big question mark at third base and Alec Bohm. But we looked past all of it, guys, because it was baseball. We were back. We had Schwarber. We had Castellanos. As we went through the compressed spring training, what was your excitement level, or how did you kind of see this thing all coming together? Moniak had a great spring. Obviously, I think it might have tempered a lot of people's expectations in center field and whatnot. But heading into that spring training, and I'll start with Joe Marks, how excited, or what was your opinion of the Phillies getting ready to start the season?
Well, I mean, I of course I was excited because of the firepower we were bringing, and having someone like Mickey come out and really show that he's taking a big step forward, and even some of the young guns with Baum and the possibility of Stott in spring training. A lot of these guys gave this team overall, the veterans and whatnot, they gave them hope that there's a possibility these guys are going to take a big step forward. And, that gave, I think, me, especially me, that hope that, okay, we're going to come out firing. We're going to come out shooting all kinds of bullets all over the place. And I felt like all we had to do, and we heard it all throughout spring training, we're not going to beat people with our defense. We're only going to beat people with our bats. That's what we heard all spring training. And as a fan base, including myself, we accepted it. And, for the most part, that's what gave the season leading into the season all that much more excitement, because everybody likes the long ball.
Yeah. Al, I'm going to go a little different direction with you. You have some huge issues with Odubel Herrera, and rightfully so. But the Phillies found themselves in a position where they brought him back, totally not addressing the center field problem that we knew going into the season that we were going to have. They brought Herrera back. We placed some bets in on the number 1 overall pick in Mickey Moniak to finally bust out of the minor leagues. And we also brought in a lame duck manager in Joe Girardi, who was coming in on a final year of his contract, was not given an extension, and we were told by Dombrowski, that's okay, it's fine. Jim Leland did that, and everything was great. Let's start with the center field problem there, Al. I know you were concerned because you voiced it very adequately to me over and over again in the beginning of the season. But how bamboozled did you feel from the Phillies that they brought Herrera back? And what was your impression of the Joe Girardi lame duck potential?
Well, the Odubel Herrera situation, yeah, as you said, I was so excited about Schwarber and Castellanos, and then kicked in the teeth with the whole Odubel around. I literally remember telling you at the end of the, last season, what was I excited about? Odubel Herrera not being here. That was the most important part to me. And then, of course, Mickey Moniak having a good spring, like you said. all right, good. Maybe this will get a double out of here faster. Um, but I got past that. I kept saying having a lame duck manager is never a good thing. I don't see it be a bad thing because what happens? They press, they get nervous, they make gut decisions out of necessity, not of longevity. We saw that with Rob Thompson. The guy was playing with a little bit with house money. This guy was playing with his a gun to the back of his head. So ultimately, I said that was one of my worries coming into it, how he would perform. And then if things got a little shaky, which we know in baseball, it's very easy to get that way,
Yeah.
he would react the way he did. And I don't want to sit there and say I predicted it the way it is because I did not. I honestly was kind of saying they should have signed him or extended him for at least one more year.
I did too.
And I'm glad they didn't overall, but that's where I was at.
All right, so we broke camp, headed back north April 8th, 2022. A beautiful sun-drenched Friday afternoon against the Oakland A's. Season kicked off. But then it kind of clugged out to the April that it was, 11-11 in the month of April, followed up by a 10-18 May. And let's kind of take this a little bit, one step at a time, guys. 11-11 in April, highlighted by a combined no-hitter thrown against us by the Mets, combined by us with Alec Bohm committing 3 errors in the same inning, combined with some reason not being able to beat the Texas Rangers at all. Just a lot of frustration. The hitting wasn't there. They were hitting home runs. Matter of fact, they hit 5 home runs twice in the month of April in a game. But that's about it. 11-11. Al, I mean, we were coming on this show. We were doing the early versions of the Phightins Phinal, and I was getting concerned in April about this. You were trying to talk me off the ledge and all that, but we'll start with you, Al. I mean, 11-11 April, was there any concern with all the other stuff going on with this team at that time, Al?
Oh, total concern. But I wasn't, like I said, knowing baseball for what it is, for the marathon versus sprint that we know baseball is, I wasn't ready to jump off the bridge. But I was nervous because the point is, we had bargain basement bullpen pieces. Okay,
Yeah.
we felt pretty good about our starting pitching rotation for the most part. But the bullpen scared us, and we thought we were going to be able to bash our way out. Well, when the bats got hot real fast, but cooled off almost instantaneously after that, and it came down to our bullpen, and we were at the watching Jerry's Familia pitch one time was enough to give a man a heart attack. Brad Hand wasn't helping the situation too much, but he wasn't as bad. As we'll get into it a little later, how this bullpen is almost completely different at the end of the season than it was in the beginning of the season. But I was nervous, but I wasn't ready to jump off. All right, this team's going to be crap yet.
Joe Marks, 11-11 April. Al hit on the, I'll call it what it was in April, the blow pen, because that's what it was in April. You also hit on, I want to talk to you about, you can go with the blow pen, but Alec Bohm, the biggest question mark for me on this team, actually, heading into this season, 3 errors in 1 inning, something I have never seen before at any level of baseball, and I witnessed it in a major league game. With that, Alec Bohm, the blow pen, we are not able to hit for anything but power and some frustrating offensive performances in April. What was your level of concern after that month?
Well, look, to touch on the April, the Phillies haven't had a above 500 record in April in quite some time. So where I came in with high hopes for the season coming out of spring training and going into April, it's the Phillies. And so I know that they always come out with the slow start. I know Kyle Schwarber doesn't know that it's baseball season until June. I know that, the Phillies, drag their asses out of, spring training and still feel like they're halfway in bed. Because that's how they play. They don't play like fundamental baseball, and they don't play summertime baseball until the summer. I mean, when the heat gets to 90, so do the Phillies bats, and so does the winning streaks. But just like Al said, because it's such a marathon, you don't start to worry in April and May. I mean, I've said this before. You can't judge who's going to the World Series in April. You can judge who's going to the World Series in September because they're going to the playoffs. They have a chance to go to the World Series. Now, to touch on Alec Bohm real quick, Matt, I came on to the final a game or two after that happened, and man, you were on the campaign to ship Alec Bohm so far outside of Philly, he might have ended up in Canada.
I was.
You know, that's the thing. And I had said to you, like, okay, he made mistakes. He's a kid. But he made the biggest mistake by making the comment he did, and then he rectified it by owning it.
Yeah.
And this fan base will support him and support any player that doesn't act like a fraud.
Yep.
And that's, I think, the difference. He saw that, whoa, I made this big error in judgment about this fan base. I didn't see that I was the one making the mistakes, not the fans. And they were holding me to my skill set, which is what they should have done. Now, look, we'll get into it later, but just the idea that Alec, as a young player, was able to flip a switch, turn the page, and be able to kind of hone his craft even after that lousy start.
It almost seemed like instantaneously it happened right after that. I mean, he started to hit. He was the most consistent bat in that lineup for the first half of the season. And then his defense slowly and surely did come around. All right, guys. But then things went from kind of slow to worse. 10-18 in May. Questions about Joe Girardi's leadership. Questions about his lack of trusting the younger players. His potential or propensity of playing Didi in front of Bryson Stott. Just to name one example of that. Really began to show itself. Phillies were sinking like a stone, 10-18 in the month of May. Now, Al, I remember as we were getting closer to Memorial Day, the fire Joe Girardi stuff was starting to really pick up steam, and I believe you jumped on the boat or on the train around that time as well. I was actually not on that train. I kept saying we got to give him more time. I think he's a good manager. Ultimately, though, Al, the Phillies saw fit to make a move there at the end of the month. 51 games in the Joe Girardi season, 22-29. Team was really kind of lifeless. Al, going back to the Joe Girardi thing, obviously in hindsight it worked out, but what was your instinct, or how are you feeling when they did finally pull the trigger and fire Joe Girardi?
I gotta correct you. I actually grabbed the biggest shovel and shoveled a lot of coal into that train engine. And as I told you then, I'm not a big fire the manager, because I agree with your statement. Your statement was players play the game.
Yes.
My problem was I started kind of seeing a Brett Brown type situation with the Phillies. You know, a losing mentality, just enveloping a locker room where that's why you had 3 errors in one game from Alec Bohm, and the bats were cold and nobody could get anything going. Everybody was failing. I mean, the Phillies were up 7-1 on the Mets at one point, and they lost the game in the 9th inning during that time frame. So, like, it's like they couldn't win if they wanted to. They could try losing and win somehow. You know what I mean? That's how bad at losing they were. They would lose at losing. And I just saw they needed a change, if anything, and that's kind of how I felt about it. I didn't want to blame Joe Girardi, and I honestly didn't think a change in manager was going to make this drastic of a change as we ended up seeing. But I knew a change needed to be made, and Joe Girardi was not going to be back next year, so you might as well start experimenting now and move forward with the future versus just hang on to the Joe Girardi idea just a little bit longer. And that's where I was going with it. No, I did not, Nostradamus this idea that, we're going to get Rob Thompson there. And Rob Thompson wasn't even a thought as a replacement for me.
Oh.
I thought they were going to bring somebody in from the outside, some glittery name that's going to make everybody all super excited and ultimately let us down in September.
I thought it was with Dusty Walton. I thought he was going to get the job. I mean, to me, he was the next in line. I mean, he deserved it the most in terms of
what made sense.
The organization. Yeah.
I heard Jim Leland. I honestly did, and I'm like, really? I mean, is he in an old age home by now? Like, I didn't know where he was going to dust Jim Leland off to bring him in But I definitely didn't think going from one lame duck to another would have been the solution.
So, Joe, kind of the same question, but I want to add a little wrinkle into it with you. So we're struggling 22 and 29. We're going to get ready to fire the manager. We got Alec Boehm hitting. We're not playing the young players, but now guess who's not hitting as well? Kyle Schwarber, Rhys Hoskins, and Nick Castellanos really are not hitting as well. And also, I haven't had a damn great season since I re-signed my contract extension in JT Realmuto. The entire middle part of our lineup was a nothing burger. And then here we go. We're going to make a decision to fire the manager. Joe Marks, did you think that was going to erase all the problems with our offense by hiring or just moving anybody else into that position other than Joe Girardi?
Not in the long term. In the short term, yes, because usually when the manager's fired, the tone in the clubhouse changes. I think it's happened plenty of times in the Phillies past. I've definitely seen it happen many, many times in the MLB history where it may not be to the drastic nature and success nature that the Phillies took it to, but that's kind of recorded, but no, I didn't think that this would persist when you let the guy go who I felt like was kind of the anchor in that clubhouse. I felt like it, we want to call him the lame duck. We want to call him the old man. We want to call him the statistician. We want to call him the bookworm or binder worm, whatever you want to call him.
Binder Joe.
Right. My feeling is that he was an anchor because regardless of what he was looking at in that binder, the attitude he brought to the ballpark, the attitude he conveyed to all of those players was listless, was like, we're just not going to care because we are who we are. Joe Girardi already made his bones in this league. He didn't have anything left to prove. And I think you saw a big difference with Rob Thompson. Now, look, I'm with Al. No one saw Rob Thompson coming in and completely doing what he did because no one thought Rob Thompson would actually sustain the job. We thought that Dabrowski was going to bring in somebody or he had somebody at the ready. But you also have to keep in mind, like, the difference between Rob Thompson and Joe Girardi. Rob Thompson did have a lot to prove. And Joe Girardi, because he didn't, it proved with the play of his players, with the manager's attitude towards the coaching staff. It just seemed lazy, listless, and quite frankly, if you can't go any further down than what Joe Girardi put that clubhouse down, it was only a matter of going up.
Speaking of a matter of going up, I want you to direct your attention to the EOP schedule this week. Yep, love that segue, guys. I'm getting good at this. This is the holiday week, and we're pre-recording this show, so you guys are going to probably be watching this on Thanksgiving, and I hope you're enjoying turkey. Watch out, fumble! Nah, I'm just kidding. So here's our schedule for the week. Chock full of everything, including on Thursday. We got some stuff for you all week long. If you're into, we're 6 for 6 now on this network. So
pretty much.
I really defy you to find any other Philadelphia sports network that has it literally all covered. Youth sports may be the next endeavor we have to try to get into, but other than that, we got it all covered.
Fine. I'll give away all my secrets.
Also, if your weekend, I know the night before Thanksgiving is probably one of the biggest nights of the year for adult activities as well as adult beverages. If you're watching this on Thanksgiving and you kind of screwed up last night, don't forget this guy is out there, Dave Cherry at 610-565-0300 for all your workman's comp, motor vehicle accident, personal injury, criminal law. Tell him Matty B, the Phightins Phinal, and EOP sent you, and he'll take great good care of you. Phillies sports trips, what can I say? Just wrapped up their trip to Indianapolis this weekend. Next one is in New York. Al, do you have any, is it still open, that one, or is it sold out? I know they're going quick.
The Chicago one is open. I think Giants is sold out, but if you need to get like the tailgate and you're already going up on your own, you can still jump in on that.
So go head over to their website, check out what they got. Don't forget the home tailgate, every home game over at the Gatehouse, aka the Navy Yard. And then, of course, if you're in Delco and you're needing of some pick-me-up, there's only one place to go, and that's Dolan's. Tell PJ that EOP sent you, and they'll take good care of you as well. And a new one here, guys, the Delco Group Toy Drive, December 9th from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Selling Delco office, 77 West Sprout Road in Springfield. Bring by your donatable toys to help out some families in our immediate Delaware Valley area so that they may have a good Christmas on that day, December 9th, 3 to 7 p.m. And some of us from EOP will probably be there. I'm thinking about heading down there and helping out myself. So, guys, all right. So here we are moving into June, 22 and 29. Now, the one thing we didn't really talk about was the Bryce Harper thing. A little factoid came up about Bryce Harper. He was having some issues with his elbow, UCL issues that would now preclude him from playing right field and move him into the permanent DH spot. Of course, we've talked about this in nauseum. If it hadn't been for the universal DH, if it hadn't been for the National League adopting the DH, we probably would not be, have had the magical ride we had. But Bryce Harper was having a good season, not an MVP season. He was struggling too, but he was hitting. Al, we talked about it. How lucky are we that we had the DH in 2022?
Well, like you just said, if it was normal baseball from the year, if nothing changed from the year before, we would have the most doom and gloom type season. Most likely, the surgery that Bryce would have had at this point. I know we're pre-recording, but it would have been yesterday.
Yes.
He would have had his surgery yesterday. Hopefully, by the time you're listening to this, it's not a full Tommy John surgery. But, he probably would have had that surgery by now. That surgery would have probably been like, yeah, we're going to do that now. If that's the way it was going to be. And probably by July, I would have seen him having the surgery. They probably would have shut him down by the end of July because this team wouldn't have been able to keep going with him at the DH. And for the fact that, hey, he kept slugging the way he did all the way up until that, and then even coming back, he struggled a little bit out the gate. But we'll get into that a little bit more. But it's, a little bit of a miracle in some ways.
Yeah. And Joe Marks, same question. Obviously, with the fact that Bryce Harper was still able to contribute the best way that he possibly could with his bat. Now, I did miss his arm in right field this year. He's a very underrated defensive player, especially when gunning out runners at the plate. I love watching him play right field. But Joe, how happy were you that we had the DH this year as well?
I'm happy about it. I'm going to chime in and say I disagree with the idea that like my partner Davey Arnold had about that if that wasn't going to be if the rules change didn't happen, the Phillies. Yeah, I get that, but I kind of agree with Joe Scorza in the sense that everyone had that rule change. Everyone in the National League. We're fortunate because the guy that is our linchpin, the MVP, was able to still play because of that rule. I won't disagree with that. But it didn't just play to the Phillies' advantage. It was an advantage for every NL team. The Phillies just took full advantage of it by being able to have an MVP caliber player and have someone be able to play that's not a bench player in his normal position in Castellanos. Because let's face it, before that injury even was reported or came down, we had Castellanos on the roster. So you had an extra weapon that was going to possibly be that DH anyhow. So we set the ball, like Dabrowski set the table to kind of make sure that if something were to happen, maybe not necessarily to Bryce, but to anybody, that he would already have that understanding of the DH. Now, keep in mind, Dabrowski came from the Tigers, the AL. He understands how the DH works. So this set the table perfectly for the Phillies. Did they take advantage? Absolutely. But you can't just say it's an unfair advantage because the only unfairness is that we had Bryce Harper.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was a rule change. It's not everybody. That's
It's one of two rule changes. Don't forget, two
Yeah.
things. If they didn't add in that third wild card spot,
Yep.
Yeah.
there or that reason, we would either one of those two rules were both not instated. And the season played out the way it did. You know,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
would,
I'm not. That's irrelevant. I mean, we didn't institute the rule change. Major League Baseball did. It wasn't the Phillies that said, you know what,
and
we
listen,
need to.
it's the only sport where there's two different divisions. Like if they're watching football, NFC, AFC. Like, could you imagine there's like a rule in football, like a major rule, a major position change? In the AFC versus the NFC.
Yeah.
It's the only it's such a weird and outdated thing, but I didn't like it. I am always kind of like the pitcher hitting a little bit. It was strategical, but it is what it is. As long as it's even, I just always felt the weirdness of the unevenness of the situation.
And I think it went a long way in our construction of the team this year with Schwarber and Castellanos. I think that was the DH was in mind for all that. All right, guys, June. Man, no one saw it coming. Rob Thompson steps in, lifetime bench coach, big-time Yankee guy. Was brought here by Gabe Kapler, by all people, as a bench coach way back when. Withstood the Kapler years, hung in there for when Joe Girardi returned or came to the Phillies. Obviously, there's some connection between Thompson and Girardi with the Yankees. Stayed on in Joe Girardi's staff, and then he finds himself as the new interim manager of the Phillies. Phillies break off a 19-8 June. Not only did they get back into the race, they propelled themselves not right into the wild card race, and then actually begin to sniff a little bit the NL East divisional lead. Sniff, I said. They didn't really quite get far, but they did sniff it. Highlighted by just a torrid run by Kyle Schwarber, who was just hitting home runs epically in the month of June. I believe it was like he was averaging 3 home runs a week. It might have been more. I got to go back and relook that. But it just seemed like he was putting the ball out. They all were. The bats began to hit. It was hitting season, all that. Everybody hits. Rhys Hoskins was hitting. Nick Castellanos wasn't, but he was also dealing with an oblique injury that would cost him a betterment of his summer. We lost Gene Segura as well to an injury. But and then Bryson, the emergence of Bryson Stott, who was getting an opportunity to play for Rob Thompson because he did not have an aversion to playing the young players. We got all the way up to June 24th, feeling really good about ourselves. And then on June 25th, the sky fell. Bryce Harper broke his hand or finger in the game against the San Diego Padres out there on the West Coast against his buddy Blake Schnell. Guys, was it the sky has fallen there for you, Al? Was it, it was great while it lasted. Might as well get him UCL surgery, shut it down. Let's pack it into 2023.
I can't say my brain didn't go there. I mean, I wasn't ready to pack it up and say, "Oh, there we go," but I did feel that the air was, let out of the room for the most part, and the fact that we started doing so hot, and I'm like, of course, this is your shoe dropping, as everybody, the old proverbial shoe. I didn't know when he got injured that he'd still be able to, he would have been able to come back, because I remember talking about this with you a lot, Matty, like just saying like, you know what? Guess what, guys? Should he have the surgery at this point? Just have the surgery and shelf him at this point. Like, just see where the rest of the season takes us. So we'll have him ready for 2023. So yeah, not to sit there and say those thoughts that go through my mind. I mean, I wasn't ready to hang it up, but I wasn't feeling special either.
No, I wasn't either. And Joe Marks, what was your impression of it, and how did you think the Phillies were going to fill the void of Bryce Harper? Now he can't play. How are they going to do that?
Well, here's the thing. I honestly was very concerned, but not necessarily for Bryce not coming back. I knew he would come back, but I was worried about, okay, how are we going to sustain the momentum we've already gained? Because, early on in the offseason prior to 2022, there were a lot of people saying the Phillies don't have a farm system. They just don't. We don't have anybody down there. So we got to bring in people like a Kyle Schwarber, like a Nick Castellanos, because we don't have anybody down there that can come up and fill a void. Well, now you have this major injury to a major player like Bryce Harper, and of course the air comes out of every Philadelphia Phillies fan going, "Oh no farm system, no Harper, no chance." And here we go. We get the cattle cave of young guns that come up here and really shine through. Yeah, they were streaky. Yeah, they weren't always, on top of every, like, they weren't making superstar, all-star plays, web gems, so to speak. But they were doing their job. They were filling the void that was so imperative with Bryce Harper down. And they did it to keep that momentum going. And I think that is a big, big piece of this season, is that when you have a guy like Bryce Harper go down, it is difficult. And already having someone like a Gene Segura down as well, it's difficult to just try and figure out how do you pick up the pieces. Interim manager, two big pieces to your starting lineup out for an extended amount of time, and you have no farm system. I almost say that the season hinged on the Phillies' success with those young guns coming up.
You mentioned the young guns, and actually, let's backtrack. I thought that when the Harper injury, obviously, I felt the same way. Really, come on, we were just picking up some momentum, and I was a big advocate of, just shut him down now. Let's get the surgery so he's back for the whole next season. But something did happen. Two things happened. That opened up DH. We were able to kind of shuffle Schwarber in there. We were able to shuffle JT in there. We were able to kind of move some people around in that lineup, give some people some time off. But actually, I think kind of really rejuvenated this lineup, which got us a few more wins into the All-Star break. And then, as you mentioned, that beleaguered farm system that I'm totally was not a fan of. I thought there was nothing down there. But then the emergence of Bailey Falter getting start spots or getting some time out of the bullpen. Christopher Sanchez, Derek, the home run hitting Hall coming out of nowhere out of Lehigh Valley. And,
Long ball Hall.
Some DH homers. Nick Maton, before he got hurt, was playing an adequate second base. They were coming from all angles, and I couldn't believe it. Things actually leading up to the All-Star break were leveled off. I mean, we were maintaining that. We got into the All-Star break. We were a firm number 2 wild card in the National League and about 7 games out of first place. Life was great. And then we came out of the All-Star break and lost 4 straight to the Cubs. And then life wasn't so good again. But July was it above 500 month? We maintained. We weathered the storm. Segura came back. Harper came back. I got a chance to go see Bryce Harper down in Lehigh Valley. It was fun. And then we get to August. And guys, August was the month where we were going to separate ourselves. We were going to make the final push. It did not quite work out that way. Dreadful road trip to Arizona. Dreadful road trip to San Francisco. Loss after loss. Series loss after series loss. If it wasn't for the Washington Nationals and our 16-3 against them in 2022, I don't know where we would be at the end of August. Al, did you come out on the side of the coin that the Phillies benefited from a poor schedule down the stretch, or are you just saying, you know what, we don't set the schedule, we just play what they tell us we got to play, and we got to win the games we got to win?
Yeah. No, who you play is in front of you. I mean, the Mets had a good schedule in front of them in the beginning of the season. Hence why they were able to stack as many wins up going into it. I mean, they played a lot of their national games. They played us a lot, who was a bad team at the time. The Braves weren't doing great in the beginning of the season either. So they had a weak division to really stack up against. On top of, they didn't play any really tough opponents like we did. We had the Mets, we had the Dodgers, we had the Braves, we had all the good teams way early, way ahead of us. It's just the way the schedule set it out to be, and we took advantage of it like a good team should. With that being said, is the success later in the season through July, and even the bit we had in August, because August was a little shaky at times, was because you had guys stepping up that you never heard of, your Derek Halls and your Nick Matons. And also, that's when JT Realmuto, I mean, he stepped up the second Harper went down. He knew his job immediately. He hit a home run to prove the fact. You play who's in front of you. You can't get around. You can't sit there and make that. People are saying that about the Eagles currently right now. They're a fraudulent 9-1 team. You play. You don't set your schedule. You don't get to pick and choose your opponents.
No, you don't, Al. And Joe Marks, kind of the same question with a different little wrinkle into it. We got into that stretch in August. As I mentioned, there was a game, I think it was August 19th against the Pittsburgh Pirates, where we lost 10-5. It was a getaway game. We were heading to Arizona right after that. From that game until the end of the month of August, we won 7 games. Now, it was highlighted by a trip to Arizona where we got swept. We lost 3 out of 4 to San Francisco. It was really doom and gloom at the time. We never quite fell out of the wild card. We fell back into that 3rd spot. We lost sight of the NL East. The Mets and Braves were battling themselves out. The Mets were falling apart, and the Braves were making their push. Joe Marks, I know we talked about it at the time. As August came to an end and September began to kind of appear, what was your take on the Phillies' final leg of the season and what they had to do to try to get into the postseason?
Well, the way that I saw it is they had to just take care of the business because they still had a favorable schedule ahead of them for September. They had to take care of business with the teams that they could take care of business towards. And, with August and kind of leaving the bad taste behind that they had in Arizona, and it was a really bad taste. And the idea that these guys, you had to figure out, are they going to bounce back or are they going to curl up on a ball and die? And we've seen both from the Phillies, especially towards September, where they have faded off. I mean, I heard it countless times, especially after August. Okay, here comes Aaron Nola in September. Here comes the Phillies' disappointments. And, it was brought up to me several times that the crowd at the bank was half capacity in September. And the response that I had was, listen, they just came off of really bad road trip. And we've been down this road before as fans. And there's got to be a trust factor. We don't want to put our hearts out there just to get it stomped. We want to put our hearts out there gradually and have you accept it. And the Phillies did that. And I feel like going forward in September, they had every opportunity, especially with the schedule, especially with the opponents, especially with the momentum. And let's keep in mind, and Al brought this up earlier, the Braves and the Mets and on all of the NL wildcard teams were playing the harder part of their schedule, the other side of their schedule. And that's kind of what evened out the banks. And people are like, oh, they had a favorable schedule. No, it evens out. It's just the other team that's ahead of us had the easy schedule first, and we happen to have the easy schedule later. And you play who's in front of you, and you win. Did the Phillies take advantage of who they played in September? Yeah, they did. But it doesn't mean that they didn't earn the wins. They absolutely earned the wins.
And they didn't always take advantage, to be honest with you. There was in September, it looked like September Phillies, trust me.
Yeah.
But with all that being said, we did have September baseball, and for the most part, we had a full complement. Our roster was intact, and to include newcomers, Noah Syndergaard and Brandon Marsh, who came over in trades with the California Angels, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, which, of course, I think that's going to bite us in the ass. I'm going to miss Logan. I'll be something fierce. But anyway, we did have September baseball, meaningful September baseball. And it was a very clunky month. It was up, it was down. Aaron Nola had a great start, didn't have a good start. Had a good start. Aaron Nola wasn't Aaron Nola, typical of September of Aaron Nola's, but he was more frustrating than he was ever before because he was showing signs of breaking out of that, and then he would come right back and not have a good start. But when the dust settled, boys, and we were sitting there at the end of the month in the early part of October with 87 wins, we were the 3rd wild card of the National League. And we also ended an 11-year postseason drought. Al, was your cup overrunneth at that point, or were you thinking, you know what, we got a run left in us for the postseason?
I mean, listen, I was excited, like you said, 11 years, man. I just can't believe that. I got a kid who's wasn't even born then, and I have another kid who was 2. So you know what I mean? Like it's something that you think about. But ultimately, I wasn't just happy with that at that point. I wanted a run. I wanted them to, in my back of my head, they got to beat St. Louis. You got to beat St. Louis. You can't just beat St. Louis. You got to beat St. Louis, move on, and then hopefully maybe go up against the Mets or something, and at least prove yourself. At least prove yourself. Not saying you have to win, but say not get trounced. And that was how I looked at it.
And you know what, Joe Marks, we did start the playoffs. It was St. Louis, a team that we've actually bested it in the regular season. Game 1 of the NLDS, or I'm sorry, the National League Wild Card Series. Got ahead of myself. The Phillies found themselves down 1-0 in the top of the 9th inning, and then they somehow broke off a 6-run inning to cruise to victory in Game 1. Joe, are you feeling magical about the Phillies after Game 1 of the NL Wild Card Series? Were you moving right on past the Cardinals at that point? Were we into the NLDS?
Yeah, I felt that way, not just because of that game, but like you said, the season series. Prior to that playoff run and the playoff push, we were all talking, including me and you, Matt, about who we would rather see. We kind of foresaw that we were going to make the playoffs. It got a little bit more hairy at the end than we would have liked, but the conversation being who would you rather face, and I really favored the Cardinals just because the other two options just weren't as favorable that early on, and especially in a short series. And the confidence that I had for that particular series is because it's 3 games. It was a short series, and the Phillies were built to win in short series because of the pitching, because of the hitting, because if you get hot and you get that first win, you're only one more win from moving on. And after that Game 1 win, I got to say, I mean, usually, and we've seen this in the Phillies this season, they give up 6 runs in the 9th inning and lose a game. We've seen that they get shut out several times, more so than they should in the season, and they don't respond. So after when they're down like that in the first game, yeah, Matt, I was like, okay, I don't know what to think about this. Is this the way that we're gonna go out in like lines out like whimpers? Like what are we supposed to go? But when that happened, when we came back from that game, absolutely thought this is going to be a run. And honestly, it was a run that I was just willing to enjoy. I mean, 11 years, that's great. I remember 08, I remember 93, but, it was the monkey off my back once we got into the playoffs. But even after that Game 1, it was like, okay, sit back, have a beer, enjoy the rest of the ride.
And a ride it was. Game 2, a gem from Aaron Nola, supported by a Bryce Harper home run, was all we needed. We took the Cardinals out in 2 games. Moving on to the NLDS to the San Diego Padres, who helped us out, which I still wish we would have gotten the Mets. But anyway, the Padres beat the Mets. So it was San Diego, Philadelphia. Al, real quick, summarize that San Diego series. Or I'm sorry, it was Atlanta. We moved on
Atlanta
to
first.
right? Yeah,
you forgot the NLDS. It's Atlanta first.
Skipping over that.
San Diego beat them, yes. Beat the Mets.
Yeah, that's right. I got all excited. We beat the Cardinals, moved on to the Braves. It was a National League East team. We were 8-11 against them in the regular season. They were defending world champions. Al, was this 1993 Phillies Braves all over again, or was this just not the ride was going to end? Tell me about how your thoughts of that series were.
Before the first game, once I found out it was the Braves, part of you has to go. The Braves always tend to be a thorn in our sides. No matter how good or bad they are, the Braves always tend. So it was a little bit of a gulp once you're like, all right, the Braves, hopefully, they can put up a fight. The way they won that first game, the energy they brought from St. Louis, I just had this feeling. I'm like, and like I said, I was in the stands for all the NLDS games, and it was there. It was electric. And I just, as the series kept going on, and I know it sounds silly to say this way, I just kept getting this feeling like there's something special happening here. Because you know what? They can go in there and, squeak out some games, or you'll lose a game here and there and all that. But the magical moments, the off the wall in the Parker by JT Realmuto, the big time hits from Hoskins, who was just, you didn't even know he was in the playoffs until then. You saw the home run from some of the new guys like Brandon Marsh. Bryson Stott. Oh, everybody was contributing, like creating new highlights for us, and not just winning games. I knew something special was going on there, and at that point, I was just like, guys, World Series or bust by the end of that series.
And it was Phillies in 5, moving on to the NLCS, this time against the Padres. Joe Marks, the Padres had just knocked off the Mets and the Dodgers to earn their trip to the NLCS. What shot did we have at all against the San Diego Padres, and how did you see that series?
So my prediction when the postseason first started was for the Phillies to get to the NLCS. And I felt like once they got to the NLCS, they were going to face the Dodgers. I was surprised that the Dodgers lost to the Padres. But I felt like that loss to for the Padres to have beaten the Dodgers, that actually played in the benefit to the Phillies because the Phillies actually had the Padres number this year. It goes back to the Cardinals series. We actually were able to do well against the Padres. So I felt like it was more of a favorable matchup than it would have been for the Dodgers. I felt like at that point, I'm like, okay, we're making a lot of noise. Let's make it worth it. And, all I kept hearing throughout the playoffs, and I mean from the Cardinals to the Braves series to the Padres series, was this pitcher's unhittable. I mean, he's not unhittable, but he's kind of unhittable. This guy's flawless. He's got a 1 point whatever ERA. The Phillies can't hit off this guy. And then we bury him. And I loved it. But, the thing that was the best part of that series was the boneheaded managerial decisions by Melton. This is proof why managers matter in baseball, because decision-making is all about putting your players in the right positions to be successful in the moment. Because at the moment, it's the pitcher versus the batter. No other player on the field matters. And in a bat, it's the pitcher versus the batter. When you have Bryce Harper coming up and you don't even go and even sniff the idea of that nice big shiny toy that you have in your bullpen in Hader, the one you traded for, it just astonishes me. I don't care if he's rarely ever pitched a 5-out save. You paid a lot to get him. Put him in when it matters. So yeah. I was pleasantly surprised, but not completely shocked.
And before we knew it, we were the 2022 NL champions on our way to the World Series the first time since 2009. That's right. And in our way was the Houston Astros, who, of course, had been to the last 6 ALCSs and sprinkled
4 of the last 5, I believe it was at that point or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't lost a game in the postseason up to that point, and then the Phillies come into Game 1 in extra innings with the JT Realmuto home run to win it 6-5, take a 1-0-0 lead. But then that was really the kind of highlight of the series a little bit for me. I mean, Game 3 was a good one. Guys, at the end of the day, we fell in 6. We can go back to the Zach Wheeler. Should he have gotten pulled out in that moment for Alvarado? We can analyze that until our faces turn blue. It doesn't change what happens. It's not going to change what happened. I honestly believe this team was not a fully constructed team. They're an imbalanced team. The Phillies are. It was great to be there. Obviously, when you get to a certain point in the postseason, you want to go all the way and win it all because it still hurts. But guys, there's going to be a flag raising ceremony in the spring at Citizen Bank Park. There will be a ring ceremony in the spring at Citizen Bank Park, and our manager will manage the National League All-Star team this year. So there is some consolation to what we did, even though we didn't win the World Series. Al, real quick, the World Series in a nutshell for you. What was it?
Felt like an amazing run was there, and we had it, and then the gas was out of the tank. We danced, we made things happen, like you said. Coming back from being 5-0, down 5-0 in the first game away in the World Series, and coming back and taking the win. Everybody felt that magic. Then like, oh, we could go get 2 in Houston. Wow, look at us. Then coming back in South Philly and like, oh, when we bring them back to South Philly, we're gonna show them what's what, and we did.
Yep.
one time.
Yep. Out of 3.
Yeah, and then 3. But I at that point, it's like the load has been blown, or the gas is out of the tank, or whatever it is. Like you said, we were not a team constructed to be a prototypical World Series champion. But the fact that we did what we did with what we had, in some ways, it was more beautiful. If you want to look at the silver lining and all that fun stuff. But ultimately, yeah, it was in a letdown. But there was my air out of my, the air let out. Somebody opened the window and the chill came through the room. Whatever cliche you want to say. Yeah, but as I said, I didn't get as upset as I thought maybe I would have, knowing just how it got here. Maybe I'll look back at it because look at '93. Look at the Phillies from '93. They're beloved, and they didn't win it. So this team has marked their way into the hearts and the history of Philly sports and Phillies history, I should say. So I think it's something amazing to be looked at and to behold, even though it didn't end out the way we would hope it.
And Joe Marks, moving into 2023 real quick, what is the legacy of the 2022 Phillies? Meaning, what is it going to mean for the city of Philadelphia and to the Phillies fan base as a whole moving into the next season, what they were able to do in 2022?
Higher and greater expectations, but I think it's going to be a greater thrill. Like I said to you earlier about September, we didn't want to get our hearts broken. Now we're willing to give our hearts. We're willing to give our hearts because we know what this team is about. They've proven it. They put their heart out there and said, take it or leave it. This is who we are. And, we respect that. We respect the hell out of that. And, that is kind of that is going to be a big motivation. I agree with you, Matt, that this is not – I didn't believe this was a fully constructed team. So that's one of the reasons why I really said I was just going to enjoy the ride, because I was like, okay, this isn't done yet. Like, the team's not done yet. I'm like, all right, we're getting this far and the team's not done yet. So expectations, and I'll say this for Philly fans even going forward, prior to the offseason and the, manager, the owner meetings, this team getting better doesn't mean that we should rest on our hands. It also means that there has to be higher goals set by the fans, by the ownership. But believe me, I'm not going to say the NN words. I'm not saying them. But this is going to be a ride for the next couple years. Now just strap on, have your expectations high, get your popcorn and enjoy, because they've proven to you without a shadow of a doubt they are willing to work hard for this city.
You know who else is willing to work hard for this city, boys? It's the EOP gang and the Painted Lines gang and Devereaux Sports. Once again, take a look at our schedule. A lot coming up on this holiday week. Again, you're watching this on Thanksgiving, so I hope you're enjoying your meal. But don't forget, there's so much that we've already had this week, and there's so much more coming up into the weekend. A lot of stuff to look forward to on the Edge of Philly Sports. And, of course, if things are going to be, if you foresee yourself having a too good of a weekend and you need some help with workman's comp, motor vehicle accidents, personal injury, or criminal law, Dave Sherry's the man to call, 610-565-0300. Tell him Matty B, EOP, and the Phight's Final sent you. And Philly Sports Trips one last time. Don't forget, get over there and check them out. They got stuff for Phillies spring training in 2023 already up on the site. You will see me somewhere in the Tampa, Clearwater area in March of 2023. Take that to the bank. I'll be there somehow. And if you're in Delco, Dolan's Bar is the place you want to go. Tell PJ we sent you. Don't forget the toy drive on December 9th. Go down there and support a great cause. And fellas, before I let you go, we've gone way over time, but it's okay because we're talking Phillies baseball. Al, who is Big Al's 2022 Philadelphia Philly most valuable player? It can be a player, it can be a coach, it can be a front office executive, it can be the fanatic, whoever you want. Who is the epitome of what the Phillies stood for in 2022 to Big Al?
I'm going to go out of the box here. Dave Dombrowski.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Dave Dombrowski, he brought in Schwarber, he brought in Castellanos. He also he was smart enough, him and Thompson we're smart enough to bring up guys and get the most out of guys with no names, like a Derek Hall and a Nick Maton, like we said earlier. They brought the trade deadline, I think, goes under the radar of how some of those key players were brought in. We didn't lose too much in the process. Maybe O'Hoppe will find out if that's true or not. We won't. So since that's an unproven commodity at this point, it was the right move to make. But Brandon Marsh's defense in center field solidified a position, not just for this year, but years to come. So he did a lot of work that, would probably be the conversation we'd be having more in the offseason, but we don't have to worry about now. So Dave Dombrowski will be will epitomize the 2023 or 2022 Philadelphia Phillies.
Joe Marks, same question to you.
I'm also going to be thinking outside the box here. I'm going to go with hitting coach Kevin Long. I think this team, when you go into any season and you make your moniker bash the bell, if you don't hit, your hitting coach is hitting the unemployment line. And Kevin Long, he proved he was brought in by Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. And this is a guy who you could tell understands the mechanics of hitting. I never really knew any of the prior hitting coaches because they never really stuck out to me. Kevin Long, in my opinion, because this had to be an offensive team, stuck out to me a lot this season because we depended on it. So my MVP for this season is hitting coach Kevin Long.
I'm actually going to do a player. We'll take the conventional route. I'm going to go Ranger Suarez. You know what? I'm going to go Ranger. One of the more consistent things that this season was for the Phillies, with all the ups and downs with the offense and the defense, was the starting pitching. And it was anchored in the back end by Ranger Suarez. He really kind of rode his 2021 out of nowhere success into a very solid regular season, and he was the postseason hero. I mean, I know Bryce Harper gets the NLCS, but boy, where would we be? Where would we not have been in the postseason without Ranger friggin' Suarez? I really like the way he came in. I definitely think he's going to be a strong candidate for a 4, if maybe not a 3rd spot in that rotation next season. He really kind of came into his own. So I'm going Ranger Suarez, man. I'm going to go with a player.
What a crazy thought.
That is a crazy thought. All right.
Ranger's a good one because he had that energy. He brought it all year long. Even when he struggled.
He did. All right, gentlemen, listen, we're well over time. I want to thank Big Al. I want to thank Joe Marks of the Patterson Ave Fanatics. Listen, the Phightins Final was a great ride. We will be back for season 2. Don't forget, circle it on your calendar, March 31st, 2023, Phillies Rangers opening day at Rangers Stadium in Arlington. I don't know what they call it. It's the one down there in Texas. And we will be back, but we're going to be back throughout the winter as well, doing some hot stove stuff. We'll keep you abreast on the free agent moves, the comings and goings. Obviously, there's been a little bit going on, but we'll save that for another day. And I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Al, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, Joe.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Joe.
A great holiday and enjoy.
When you guys are watching this, you're enjoying your second helping.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Matty B.
I'm Big Al.
I'm Joe Marks.
And we're the Phightins Final, and we're going to leave you. Well, we're going to leave you here on the Phightins Final the way I've left you all season long, and that's going to be taking a look back at some home runs. I got every home run of the Phillies 2022 postseason, folks. We will talk to you again real soon. Till we talk again, go Phils.
To play hero ball, he did not, and was patient and took the walk. Oh, that one's driven deep to right field. There it goes. See ya! A long home run for Harper. It is 1-0 Phillies.
Two on, 1 out. And the pitch. Swung on! Did it! Crushed! And the Phillies are going to lead it 4-0. A 3-run home run for Rhys Hoskins. His first postseason home run, and he's sprinting around third base. Here's Harper against Dylan Lee. Runner at first, one down, and the pitch hit high and deep, right field, and that one is headed out.
Yes.
Bryce Harper with a 2-run home run over the out-of-town scoreboard in right center. 6-0 Philadelphia.
On a 2-2 pitch. He lifts one in the air. Deep right field. There it goes. Marsh comes through. And so a lot of the key pieces for Atlanta good to go here. Fly to center field. Harris on the move. Still going. Michael Harris can't get there. And Rio Muto can run for days. JT on his way to third. He looks for it inside the Parker. And the catcher has one. He's talking about what the Braves did last year. Harper the other way. Down the left field line. Bryce Harper. Exclamation. Darvish comes home, and the reigning MVP, Bryce Harper, lifts one the other way. That sends Profar back. Is it too high, or did he get enough? He got enough! Home run Harper! Phillies strike first. That's how he's pitched tonight, backwards. And it is a breaking ball. Schwarber was ready. How far does this go? Second deck. Kyle Schwarber tees off. 2-0 Phillies. That last at bat that he had when he got that single, it looked quick, short to the ball. It looked like it unlocked something, and he sat on it and crushed. 3-2 pitch. In the air to right center field. Back it goes. Leadoff home run. Phillies looking for a quick response. Hoskins hammers the ball. Left center field. Rhys Hoskins. Redemption again. Represents the tying run here in the fifth on a 1-1 from Manaea. He cracks one in the air to left center field, and he's done it again! The Sounders tied! On 2-1. In the air to center field. Way back there. Straight away. Long gone. Monster shot. Kyle Schwarber. In this bullpen game, already going to be doing that a little bit. Rio Muto turns on a ball. Kiss it goodbye. 10 runs for the Phils. On the 7th pitch, Harper hits one in the air, left center field, back it goes, Harper, the swing of his life! shot. Reese Hoskins owning October. 2-0 Phils.
Three-two from Garcia. Real Muto shoots one in the air the other way. Back goes Tucker at the wall. It's gone. Real Muto starts the 10th with a go-ahead shot. He tied it in the 5th. He gives them the lead in the 10th. And from
McCullers to Harper. It's filled. Right center field. Lightning strikes. 2-0 Phils. Into this game. 2-0 Phillies. Alec Bohm starts the second and rips one to left field. Over Alvarez and gone! Ambush! 3-zip! On a 2-0 from McCullers. Marsh hits a fly ball to right field. Tucker drifting back to the track, to the wall. He can get it. It's off the top of the wall and gone. The 3rd home run for the Phillies. Pitchers that have been known to have given away pitches. Schwarber flies it to center field. McCormick's going back. He's at the track. He's at the wall. Gone! Wow! Monstrous blast! And they get out of their own mechanics when they're at the plate. Hoskins with a drive, left field, wow! An explosion! The South Philly Bombers with 5! That's at bets. At bets, yeah. Schwarber turns on a ball, deep right field and gone! Of course he did! And get success. Let's see on 2-2. It's a fastball and it's cranked to right field and it's gone! Astros blink first. Schwarber with a blast, and it's 1-0 in the 6th. It's about as quick a hands as you're going to see when we get a chance to see this replay. And Schwarber